Faze is winning the Atlanta Faze HCS tournament, and let me tell you why. My name is Buck. I go by My First Instinct. I competed in year 1 of the HCS and have just kind of been watching ever since then. And going into this Atlanta HCS event, I wanted to kind of make a prediction video of how I think the tournament will go. Before we jump into this, just remember that this is my opinion. I am not an expert in this field, but I do study it a lot. I love this. This is what I've been doing for over 20 years of my life, is watching competitive Halo. So when it comes to understanding the professional side of things, I just have some more observer experience, and I'm excited to share my opinions on this with you. Before we dive too crazily into this, I will let you know that I may be wrong on the bracket. The bracket I'm using is based off of the London bracket from their pools. So I have got all the pools and the performances, and then what the London bracket looked like. So then what that looks like from the pools. So therefore I could then see pool play for the Atlanta tournament and then incorporate that into the bracket that London had. So assuming that this bracket is correct, this is exactly how I think the tournament will go. So starting with pool play, for the HCS Atlanta event, they released the maps for each pool and who they're going to be playing against. Behind the webcam right about here, underneath where my mouse is at, it says pool seeds 1 versus 2 and 3 versus 4. So the 1 versus 2 seeds are going to play this, and the 3 versus 4 seeds are going to play this. For the middle column, 1 versus 3, 2 versus 4. And for pool seeds 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3, they're going to play their respective game types. I will say this, I assumed that all of the 1v4 and 2v4s resulted in a 3-0 win in favor of the higher seed. I'm sorry, but especially with the 4th seed coming from the open bracket, which has not happened yet, there is no way for me to know who's going to be playing against who, and I just think it's safe to say that Optic is going to 3-0 the number 4 seed in most cases, along with FaZe, SSG, and Shopify Rebellion, right? Like, I just think that's safe to assume. So with that being said, we're going to spend the majority of our time in this first section right here. And one reason why I do want to spend some time in that, actually, the second one is where I actually do want to spend a good amount of time. But for this first one right here, it's pretty simple. I will say first round would be FaZe versus Complexity. Because Complexity has Ryanoob on there, I do think that Ryanoob would be able to snake out one of these. Forbidden is just such a weird map. I know that pros have kind of gotten it on lock nowadays. I do think that Ryanoob would be able to make something happen here. Same thing with Recharge Slayer. Recharge is one of the nerdiest maps in the game mode, in my opinion. And once again, you've got the nerdiest player. You've got Ryanoob. Same thing goes with like the next 3, though. King of the Hill on Livefire. Livefire is kind of a quirky, weird, nerdy map. King of the Hill is kind of a quirky, weird, nerdy game type. Put the two together, I think Ryanoob can make something happen there. I don't think that Complexity would be able to win the series, though, so I do think that FaZe would win either 3-1 or 3-2. In this case, it really doesn't matter. FaZe will still win that. For Optic and ITB, Into the Breach, Optic's going to 3-0 them, in my opinion, on that one. Shopify and Sentinels, same thing as the first matchup with FaZe and Complexity. I think that Shopify or Sentinels are going to end in a 3-1 or a 3-2. I think those teams are one of the most evenly matched teams in the league. At any point, one can go over the other. Like, that's just my opinion on that. SSG versus Quadrant, I do think that SSG is going to 3-0 them, unless Quadrant really does show up. I don't think that the last tournament, London, Quadrant really showed up. Quadrant really feeds off of crowds and everything, so you would think that they would kill it in London. That didn't really happen, but they are going up against Legend, so they have some fire underneath them to burn and kick some butt, especially after their not-so-great performance at London. So I think that Quadrant might be able to take a map off them, but still SSG will come out on top. For the 3 versus 4s, although the same rules apply essentially for all the other versus 4s, that I do think that in this situation, Pure will 3-0 their opponent, C9 will 3-0 their opponent, and now Incognito is kind of the toss-up, but I still think that they're going to like 3-0 them. And I'm saying 3-0, it could be 3-1, 3-2. It could be a number of the things. I just still think that Incognito, C9, and Pure will beat their players. Now, this sad reality is we do have Bonton. I don't even know how to say that. They get a 9th seed here. If we're being honest in the Halo realm, like, no offense to these guys or anything like that, but it's such a weird spot because I do think that essentially the 10th, 11th, and 12th seeds are all better than the 9th seed. So it's unfortunate that that's how it works, but it kind of is based off of regions and points and things along those lines. So it's a little bit out of our control. So when it comes to this pool, I do think that loser bracket round 2 has a chance of winning against Bonton. So it also depends on who comes out of the losers bracket, to tell you the truth. But I do think that they have a chance of being Bonton. So that would be pretty much the only person from the, or only team from the open bracket that I think could win and continue playing, in my opinion. For the 1 versus 3s, once again, like I said, we're skipping the 2 versus 4 and the 1 versus 4 right here, just because I think that the number 1 seed and the number 2 seed are not going to lose to a open bracket team. Once again, no offense, but that's just the reality. Okay. For the 1 versus 3 seed, most of this is pretty obvious, but there's one, and I'm going to touch on it last, that I think can sway in a different direction, and I really want it to sway in a different direction. All right. Faze versus Bonton. Sorry, Faze is going to 3-0 you, and probably the quickest 3-0 imaginable. So Faze wins that. Shopify Rebellion against C9. I could see that going 3-1. I think that C9 will be able to pull out one of the objective games or a Slayer. That's where I stand with that. But I do think that Sentinels are going to at least 3-1, if not 3-0, C9 going into this matchup. SSG versus Incognito. SSG is going to 3-0 them, just outright 3-0 them. SSG is very good. They're going to stomp. Now, the one that's going to be the kind of the wild card in this 1 versus 3 lineup right here is Optic Gaming versus Pure. The reason why I say that is, if you guys don't know who Pure is, Pure is Cherished, Druk, Lashot, and Talek. One of the hottest teams on the league right now in the Pure, like, just fun to watch. They're gonna go crazy, stuff like that. I think Pure is gonna pop off, like, just pop off. And it all comes down to the pool play. Being with Optic, being with Into the Breach, it's gonna be a very fascinating outcome here. But that being said, I think that they've got a lot of maps that are going to go in their favor. They specialize in speed. They're very fast. And so for a map like Solitude, which is a very spawn trappy fast map, they also have some Halo 5 people in there. Druk, right? And Talek. Druk and Talek are your Halo 5 kids. They're really good at it. But also, Druk is going to this tournament, which is always a toss-up. I know that sounds crazy to say, but Druk being at a LAN is always a toss-up because he has visa issues. He is in Atlanta right now. So I do think that this team is going to come hot, especially on the Solitude Slayer. Recharge King of the Hill, I do think that Optic may take that off of them. And like I said, Solitude Slayer, then Pure is going to come kick some butt. Live Fire Strongholds, a very trip cap, fun, fast map. Oh yeah. I think Pure is going to have a heyday on this map. And Aquarius CTF is also a very fast-paced game. They specialize in capture the flags. They destroy and capture the flags. They got a 2-minute game on Faze. It was insane. They are very, very good at capture the flags. So this can go one of two ways. The way that I was just explaining it to you and the way that I kind of want it to go is 1 to 3. I think that Pure most definitely can win this matchup right here. This matchup against Optic Gaming is going to be the biggest matchup for them and is really going to dictate the rest of their seeding and their pool play and also just their tournament play. I think that beating Optic is extremely important to Pure. They need to beat Optic. If Optic does win, though, it is going to be a game 5. It's going to go 3-2 if Optic wins. The only reason why I say that they can do that is if it gets to a game 5, Optic clutches up. And that's that. Optic clutches up. They've got the experience. They are technically a better team. I think that they will clutch up in a lot of these cases, but I think Pure has the match lineup to be able to beat them. For the 2 versus 3 on over here, we've got Complexity versus Bonton. Once again, Complexity going to come out on top. ITB versus Pure. I do think that Pure 3-0s them here, Based off the maps, interface strongholds, very fast paced, right? Pure is going to have a really good chance of just being fast on this. Same thing with Streets Slayer. It's a Slayer game type, and on Streets, very fast paced. And CTF Imperium, once again, like this is their lineup. Pure has a very strong lineup going into this tournament, so I think they're going to 3-0 into the breach. Sen versus C9, I think is Sentinels are going to 3-1 C9, and then Quadrant versus Incognito. I think that's going to go to a game 5. I think that Quadrant is also a very fast-playing team, so they're going to benefit in some of these cases. But I think that Incognito is going to kind of catch them off their game and kind of fight back a little bit. Incognito is a newer team, and so they don't have like a newer put-together team, so they don't have that experience together, whereas Quad does. But I do think that Incognito is going to come in hot into that matchup, so I think that that's going to be a game 5. Where that's going to put the pools is I do believe that Pool A will have Faze going 3-0. Complexity going 2-1, Bonton going 0-3, and the loser bracket round 2 group going 1-2. That is my opinion on Pool A. Pool B is going to be, there's essentially 2 options here. Either Optic is going to be in first, going 3-0. Pure is going to be second, going 2-1. Into the Breach is going to be third, going 1-2. And then losers bracket round 1 will go 0-3. The alternative would just be Optic and Pure swapping places. So Pure going 3-0, Optic going 2-1. That would put Pure first, Optic second. And I do take that into consideration in this next segment. Pool C, I believe Shopify is going to go 3-1. Sentinels will go 2-1. C9 will go 1-2. And then the winners bracket round 2 will go 0-3. Pool D, we've got Space Station going 3-0. Quadrant going 2-1. Incognito 1-2. And winners bracket round 1 going 0-3. Which is just very historical when it comes to those winners brackets and losers brackets. So I apologize, guys. I really do hope the best for you guys coming out of the open bracket. We love a Believe the Hype story. I hope to do the best for you guys, but just going off of history, it's not looking very good. I have designed this bracket right here, and based off of the London tournament, this should be what it looks like based off of the pool placements and all of that. This is what this should look like. The 4th place in all the pools get knocked out, so that leaves 8 teams up here, 4 teams down there. So this is a top 12. For the startup, assuming that Optic comes out top in their pool, this is what it will look like. Faze versus Pure, SSG versus Sentinels, Shopify Rebellion versus Quadrant, Optic Gaming versus Complexity, and then C9, loser bracket round 2, Into the Breach, and Incognito in the loser brackets. The other 4, so the other 3 winner bracket rounds, loser bracket round, and the Bonton, those 4 automatically get eliminated from the tournament. So that takes them to this. Going into the first round, I think that the outcome will result in Faze beating Pure, SSG beating Sentinels, Shopify beating Quadrant, Optic beating Complexity. So then that makes it to where the loser bracket round now has Pure versus C9, Sentinels versus loser bracket round 2, Quadrant versus Into the Breach, which is going to be one of the best matchups if this does end up happening, and then Complexity versus Incognito. Overall, a very interesting start down here. It seems like 2 solid teams are in this upper bracket side, whereas 2 not so solid teams are down in this lower bracket side. Now, when it comes to the bracket and placing, there's an algorithm that's super complicated, so I may have the wrong algorithm, I may have the wrong setup, which would be unfortunate, but based off of London, this is what it would look like from the winning and losing from what I've seen, okay? After those games get played, I do think that Pure does clutch up against C9. I say clutch up, but I do think that Pure beats C9 here. Sentinels will beat the losers bracket round 2. Not really a surprise there. Quadrant and ITB. I think ITB is going to feed off of hype. Wootum, everyone loves Wootum. Wootum is a fan favorite right now. I think there's going to be a lot of hype into that. The 2 best European teams going against each other is always a fun matchup, but I do think that ITB will come out on top of that. Complexity versus Incognito. Complexity is just dirty with their team, and Ryan Noob is just Ryan, so we'll see what happens there. Faze versus SSG. This is something I should have touched on earlier, but I think that Faze is building into their element, and what I mean by that is they have built a culture of winning, and I mean that team, right? Royal 2, Snakebite, and Frosty, those 3, built that legacy with Lethal, and they were in their element. They were just winning, and it was insane to watch. They were so good at the game. I think that replacing Lethal and getting Renegade, they're in that same mode. They're ready to win. They're ready to destroy. I really do think that FaZe is just untouchable at the moment. So FaZe and SSG, although it is kind of a coin flip, SSG is also a phenomenal team. Legend is a phenomenal addition. You also have Bound, which is crazy. Stellar, which is crazy. And Eco, the grandpa, the wisest man that we could ever have in the league. All of that on one team. Like, it's scary. So this matchup could be anyone's game, but I do think that FaZe is going to come out on top. Optic Gaming versus Shopify, that's going to be a game 5. That's going to be a game 5. Both of these will be game 5s if we're being honest, but I do think that Optic, with their ice in their veins, their experience and everything like that, will clutch up once again. Moving on to our next matchup, I do think that Pure can beat Sentinels. So I believe that the maps that they would be playing would be Elim round 2. I believe that that's the maps that they would be playing. But once again, this lineup, Recharge Strongholds, I think Pure can win that. Solitude Slayer, I think Pure can win that. Live Fire Oddball, I think that Sen or Pure could win that. And then Forbidden CTF, I think that Pure can win that. So I do think in this lineup right here, Pure versus Sen, I think that Pure would take that. So Pure moves on to go against SSG. I think that Complexity clutches up against ITB. Once again, Ryan Noob doing what Ryan does. And then, of course, I do think that FaZe still beats Optic Gaming, so puts FaZe up into the next round. After those games get played, I think that SSG does beat Pure. SSG is a very, very good team, so I do think that they knock Pure out of the tournament. And then Shopify versus Complexity, I think Shopify is there, and they're gonna win that matchup right there. That does give us our top 4 right here: FaZe, Optic, Space Station, Shopify. That's pretty much where we're at right now when it comes to the top 4, right? Like these 4 teams right here. Here's the caster's guess, right? And once again, the top 4 is about the same. The only one that has a curveball is Clutch, and let's be honest, Clutch is a wild card in this situation, right? But you know, the majority of people have FaZe winning, Space Station getting second, and then Optic is either like third, first, or this one second down here. Shopify is a little bit all over the place. I think they're doing Shopify a little bit dirty, but anyway, Shopify a little bit all over the place. And then, of course, these wild cards. I don't think these wild cards are necessarily inaccurate. Sentinels is, I think these two, which are identical, are one of the more realistic outcomes, and I'll break into that. But like Sentinels being the wild card and all that, this is like the standard top 4 that we're looking at here. And then who I think would be the outcome of SSG, Shopify, and then it's just going to feed into the rest. You'll see when I do it. I do think that SSG is going to beat Shopify. SSG will then beat Optic, and then that'll be FaZe versus Optic, or FaZe versus Space Station in the grand finals. Could be a toss-up, but also I could see FaZe winning the whole tournament. This is most likely what I think will happen, but I do think that if Pure changes the pace of the league, or the event, it will change everything, and I will show you that right now. So, assuming that Pure can beat Optic in pool play, and Pure can go 3-0 in pool play, it does change it up exponentially, because Pure now plays up against Complexity and Optic against FaZe. Once again, this is what I've pulled from the London bracket. This could be wrong, but based off of the bracket and everything that I saw in the pool play, this is what I think will be the outcome if Pure beats Optic. So, FaZe versus Optic, SSG versus Sentinels, Shopify versus Quadrant, Pure versus Complexity, and then these 4 teams stayed the same. So first matchups are a little crazy. I think they're a little crazy. I do think that FaZe beats Optic, so Optic is already in the losers bracket. SSG still beats Sentinels, Shopify still beats Quadrant, and then Pure beats Complexity. That's where it mixes everything up, is because now Pure is deeper into the league and Optic is in the bottom, which makes kind of sense. Optic going against FaZe, I think FaZe wins. I do. And especially that early on, FaZe is ready. Now, we have seen in the past, though, where FaZe gets knocked out of the winner's bracket first round and plays out of the losers the entire time. We have seen that in the past. But if that does happen, FaZe is winning the whole tournament still. Regardless, though, FaZe beats Optic here. SSG beats Sentinels. Pure beats Complexity. Shopify beats Quadrant. So now we got Optic against C9. Sentinels versus losers bracket round 2. I'm missing this one, but it should be Quadrant. Yeah, Quadrant. I don't know what happened there. Maybe it shows up on the next page. Yep, it does show up on the next page. But Quadrant versus ITB, Complexity versus Incognito. Going into this next matchup, FaZe beats SSG, Shopify Rebellion does beat Pure. Down here, Optic beats C9, which I don't think that surprises anybody. Sentinels beats Losers Background 2, doesn't surprise anybody. ITB still beats Quad, Complexity does beat Incognito. So we're in a pretty similar boat, minus the whole Pure and Optic situation. SSG falls down here, Pure falls down here, which then leads us to SSG versus Optic and Pure versus Complexity, FaZe versus Shopify. FaZe does beat Shopify. Shopify's in losers finals. SSG and Optic go up against each other. Pure and Complexity go up against each other, which, to no surprise, I think Pure beats Complexity. And I do think that SSG beats Optic. So Optic goes out in like a top 6 finish or something. Yeah, right? Yeah, top 6 in this world. So now top 4 is completely or not completely, but like top 4 is different. You got Pure instead of Optic. That's a big change, right? So SSG and Pure, this matchup, I don't think comes to anybody's surprise. I think that SSG wins. SSG then beats Shopify and goes up against FaZe in the finals, and I still think that FaZe wins it all. So in my opinion, FaZe is still winning this whole tournament, but I would love to see Pure, one of the like top teams, but more so not as experienced, especially having Its Last Shot and Cherished on their team, who I don't think has ever placed in the top like 6 or beyond, maybe even top 8. Maybe Cherish has. I don't have the facts behind that, but more so, you've got Talik and Druk, who are the veterans on that team. They have had a top 3 finish, I believe, back in Kansas City. But I do think that this would be a very fun outcome, and I do hope that this does happen. Nothing against Optic, but more so that seeing the underdog appear, pop off, and do well would be extremely fun to see. So I'm going to show you guys one more time the bracket. This is with Optic doing well, right? This is with Optic beating or winning out in pools and everything like that. It makes it to where FaZe, SSG, Optic, and Shopify are your top 4. FaZe winning it all, Optic getting top 3, and then Pure and Complexity get top 6. So then here's the alternative. FaZe winning it, SSG getting 2nd, Shopify getting 3rd, Pure getting 4th. That would be wild. That'd be fun. And that is the type of stuff that we want to see around here. Those are my predictions on who I think will win or how far people will get in the HCS Atlanta tournament coming up this weekend. I do think that it's really FaZe's game. I think FaZe is going to come out on top. I think there's some fun matchups. If we do see ITB and Quadrant go up against each other, that would be a phenomenal matchup. Once again, top 2 EU teams going head-to-head is always fun to see. Seeing Pure do well would always be fun to watch. I think that Complexity is another one to have your eyes on. They were doing kind of well, and Brian Noob, Suspector, it's going to be fun. So I'm really curious to see how this tournament goes. I'll be watching it all weekend. I hope you guys will be too. Let me know who you guys think will be winning the event and or getting top 4, top 6, whatever it may. Let me know your prediction. As far as it may go, I want to hear it. Once again, thank you guys for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.